Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to today's Man Alive episode. I am excited to talk today about financial literacy and some common financial pitfalls that people make and how to really secure a financial future for yourself. And I'm happy to be here today with William Matthews. Welcome, William.
Welcome, Shana. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I love the title of your book, Everything I Need to Know About Money I Learned from My Broke Ass Friends.
Based on a true story.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us a little bit about how you came to that story.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity and the platform to talk about all of my books, but primarily the one on financial literacy. So it was a book that started from conversations that I would have with friends and just hearing the horror stories of some of these financial decisions that they were making. They were making horrible decisions with their finances. And so I decided to
at the time, was there this discrepancy of like you were doing well and they were struggling, or how did that go?
Conversation over drinks of just them like student loans, car note, how do you pay for childcare, or I'm going to take a trip to Miami for the weekend and I'm going to go to a payday loan place to get the money. And I'm like, So, and it also came from doing speaking presentations of high school students, college students. I went to various nonprofits. So I did years of research.
Talking about money and financial literacy.
Talking about money management and financial literacy. Okay. And so I did years of research before I decided to do the book. But essentially the book really was a catalyst from my speaking presentations and decided to make it in a comical way because financial literacy is such kind of a subject that's not really sexy that people want to talk about.
Not always palatable. People aren't like, I want to read about this.
Or, I want to go hear him talk about money for an hour and a half. And so my idea was to really make it comical and fun and engaging, but yet easy to read, but to get in and out. So the book is less than 100 pages.
I love it.
My good friend came up with the title based upon a previous book that I had written, but kind of did a spin on it. Yeah. And each chapter, I'm talking about a friend or a family member. Names have been changed to protect the identity of those mentioned.
But their struggles and what they were going through.
Their struggle, right. And how I'm talking about their challenges that they had and also giving recommendation of what you can do and how to do things differently. And so some of the chapters in the book, one title is Before You Say I Do, Things You Should Know. Yeah. Or should I buy a $50,000 car and I still live at home with my parents?
Should I, wait, say that again? Should I what?
Should I buy a $50,000 car and I still live at home with my parents? Or, Sally Mae, you should know everything about her because she knows everything about you.
Right.
And so that's really the idea, these really comical ways of talking about money, because it is such an unpleasant conversation that people have. So that was really how the books came from about.
Yeah, I love it. So what would you say, you talk about common financial pitfalls. What are the most common ones that you see, and especially since the show is geared toward men, it doesn't have to be gendered, but what are the most common financial pitfalls that you see men especially fall in?
I think it's a universal thing, no matter age, race, religion, creed, whatever. I think I've come into a lot of men, same thing with women, but definitely with men, keeping up with the Joneses. You want the biggest house or the biggest truck or whatever the case, because your friend or your homeboy has that. And I always use the analogy, people are trying to keep up with the Joneses, but the Joneses can barely pay their bills. So I also think another habit is people not making a budget and sticking to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to, if you have a goal or to have a budget, to really have an accountability partner. Someone will hold you accountable and make sure that you stay on track. No different than if you want to start a new workout regimen, or if you want to eat more healthier, you have a personal trainer or a friend, or if you're fortunate to have a nutritionist or a chef, you have that person that's holding you accountable. So it's no different than your own personal finances. It's really, who do you trust, and who is not going to be a yes person that can really help you keep track or
not going to be a
goal.
yes person, meaning like they're actually going to call you on your shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay, so for someone who has a goal, like I want to buy a house, you know, it's one of my goals, or I want to, you know, send my kids to college, or I want to buy a car, something like that, right? Like, can you walk us through how you would start having them have accountability, navigate that goal? Like, what are the steps that they would actually take to meet that?
Yeah, I think first you look within your circle. If you don't have any friends or family members who that you admire the way that they are financial responsible. So let's say you don't have that. There are different organizations, and there are a conglomerate of nonprofits that are out there just by doing some internet searching that you kind of go and meet with a caseworker, but they're kind of a financial advisor that can help you. You know, they're not going to do anything intense as far as like putting together a major financial plan or anything like that. It's just the basics. But there's so many different ways. So if you don't have the family, look and see some nonprofits that are out there that can provide the service to you. But I think first having that accountability partner, and then one of the questions that they're going to come to you is they're going to say, well, what are your goals? What do you hope to achieve? Well, I want to buy a house. Okay. Well, my question would be, let's say I'm your accountability partner. It would be, have you started to do any savings?
Right.
Or how much?
How do you know like how much you need to save? How do you help people do all of that research?
Yeah, well, it would be looking at their budget and just say, okay, well, you might need to eliminate this $250 cable bill. I mean, because are you really watching that much television? Or, oh, okay, I see you're spending out almost $200 just on going out to eat. You're spending another $75 at $5. I call Starbucks $5 because every time you go in, you're guaranteed to spend at least $5. So the first thing would be looking at the budget. And again,
so you look at it more like cutting, like what can we cut here? But how do you also have a goal of like, we need to save X number of dollars toward the goal?
I think first it would be to look at the budget to see exactly what are you spending your money on and what are your monthly expenses. And then going from there, the second step would be to see, could we eliminate anything?
Got it. Okay. So it's like becoming more conscious.
Right. Because most people don't even know where they're spending their money. So that's the foundation of everything is let's take a hard look at your monthly expenses and what are you spending your money on? Then going to see, could we eliminate anything or what could we kind of reduce the price of? Then thirdly, okay, we've eliminated some things. By us eliminating, we've saved additional $300 a month. So you might have already been saving $200 a month to reach this goal, to buy a house, a car, to send your kids to a private school. But now we can add an additional $300 into that. And now we need to talk about, are we going to be saving this in the piggy bank in the kitchen, underneath the mat, at the bank? Do you need to open up a separate account because you're not disciplined not to touch this account? So those are kind of the very baby steps that we would take. So you really got to start from step one, not just, well, I want to save $10,000, help me. No, we need to get to the root of all of that. And again, I love using the analogy of it's no different than if someone is trying to buck up, since this is geared towards men, or eat better. The first question is, well, what are you eating? What are your goals? Show me, write down everything that you're eating for a week. Yeah. And then I'm going to come to you and we're going to go over that list. This is no different because when I work with people in the past, I would say, write down all your spending for 1 week. Save all of your receipts and put them in an envelope. And when we get together, we're going to spread all of that out and look at all of that spending so I could track to see where your spending is going. Because for me, when I did this about 10 years ago, I was astonished at how much I was spending at happy hour. I had to be a very happy person because I was going to happy hour.
Was not happy even though you were having a happy hour. Yeah.
All the time. So I reduced that tremendously and decided to save some of that money, use that money towards paying off debt.
Yes. And what happens if someone has a financial goal that's bigger than, say they're like, wow, I can save $300 or $500 a month, but my goal is $10,000, and if I save I guess if you save $500 a month, you get to $6,000 pretty fast, right? So, but let's say the goal is bigger. The goal is $50,000 or $100,000, and they realize I don't actually have that long. What do you help them do then?
Start small. I always say, slow cook this process. That's almost just to say, I'm going to become a vegetarian overnight, or I'm just going to stop smoking cigarettes overnight. That's going to be a very tough thing to do. So I always say, start small. It's okay with having a long-term big goal, but I would be realistic to say you need to have a kind of a short-term goal and a long-term. So the long-term goal could be 50,000, but for right now, let's just spend the next 90 days on trying to save $1,000 or 500.
Yeah.
So let's start there, because once you've achieved that short-term goal, your ambition and your attitude is going to be so much better. It's going to help you get to that long-term goal versus if you just try to reach for the stars at the top, it's tough to achieve. So start small. That would be my recommendation to people. And it could be even, I've worked with people, it could be as small as try to save $100 a month.
Yeah.
And that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
$100 a month. And we work on ways to save that. But to initially answer your question, if you do have a long-term goal, once you've met the short-term goals, I would look at other resources of how you could get to your goal a little bit faster. And that could be maybe, let's look at your credit now to see maybe you can borrow some money.
Yeah.
Look at to see what type of investments, or maybe, and it depends on, again, what the goal is. But I always tell people, if it is to buy a house or put a down payment on a house, one of the resources I always tell people is look at your retirement. If you have a 401k or 403b, it's okay to borrow against that for a substantial down payment.
Interesting.
Use that asset that you have there, that money, to make this down payment, because the home is an investment. That you will reap the benefits of years to come. And I actually worked with a really good friend last year that borrowed against her 401k to purchase for the down payment of her home, because she didn't have a family member that could give her a $10,000 check. She had some money saved, but she needed that money towards the down payment, inspections, insurance. So she's like, well, I got like 60,000 to 100,000 just in retirement. Is it okay if I maybe take 5,000 out of that? Absolutely.
Great. So people sometimes have more money than they realize if they've tucked it away or put it away for the future.
They do.
Yeah. What are any stories that come to mind of people who have saved, or from your own life, of these financial lessons, or people who have done things that they didn't think that they could?
Yeah, and that's always an amazing experience when you work with someone and they've reached their goal and they come back to you and say, it's all because of you. I've worked with people in the past that were able to pay off a car or purchase that home by having that down payment, or just pay off debt. There was someone that comes to mind that didn't pay their student loans, that were just kind of ignoring them. And I said, why don't you just call them to try to see if you can get on a payment plan? And lo and behold, they were able to get on a nominal payment plan, and their credit slowly improved because they were making these monthly payments. And I tell people there's nothing worse than running from the government. Like, so if you owe child support, IRS, student loans, those are the three you really need to tackle immediately, ASAP. If you owe money to any of those individuals that I just mentioned, you probably should close your laptop or phone and immediately call them. Stop looking at this right now, because
interest is so high.
Interest is very high. They will garnish your wages because they do have that power, or they will catch up with you in some way, shape, or form. And I've even witnessed where someone has turned 65. They are now starting to receive their Social Security check, and the government says, wait a minute, I've tried to contact you for years to get my money. You ran from me. You never paid me. So now I'm going to take $500 out of your $1,500 Social Security check till you pay me off. And they're thinking, they can't do that. Yes, they can, because if you think about it, it's all coming out of the same pot. So I always tell people, child support, IRS, student loans, that's the government. You don't want to play with Uncle Sam. And in my book, I talk about that. Like, you do not want to play with Uncle Sam. The government is one, if you owe money to, you need to get on a payment plan. But in the government's defense, in Uncle Sam's defense, I will say he's great with payment plans and working with you. Awesome. And you can't always say that about other debt collectors. They just say, well, we want you to pay us $1,000 a month, and that's the end of it. Uncle Sam, on the other hand, might be, well, if you can only afford $250, show me some proof that this is all that you can pay, and here's what I'll do. Instead of $250, if you've been approved, if that's all you can pay, we'll say we'll call it a day, saying paying me $200 a month for the next 6 months or whatever. So they're willing to work with you.
Yeah.
And most people just don't realize this by making that phone call and trying to get into some type of payment arrangement that it will actually is not as bad as it seems.
Awesome. What's one of your favorite parts about doing this job and, being kind of in the trenches with people in their financial, what do you want to call it? Their financial mess.
The financial world, financial literacy. I think for me, it's been such an enlightening experience to help primarily Black and brown individuals that this isn't taught at home. And it's so much of it is a generational cycle. They witness their parents and grandparents kind of make these same mistakes, and you kind of learn the trade just because of no one taught you any different. It blows my mind that financial literacy is not taught in school.
I know, that it's like not the foundation of life, of education.
Right, because how many of us are still using trigonometry, algebra 2, and all of that on a regular, and calculus on a regular basis, but yet you have high school seniors graduating 17, 18 years old, and they have no concept of credit card debt. What's a credit score?
Right.
What's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion? Like, what is that, a pill to take? They have no idea of that, but yet we're teaching them all this other stuff. Now, I'm not knocking calculus and trigonometry and all that. I think that that's great, but to me, I feel that should be an advanced learning, like an AP course. Yes. And I feel the basics financial literacy should be something that is offered to 11th graders and 12th graders, and it's something that is mandatory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's needed. Something that's mandatory before you graduate. But to answer your question of how it makes me feel, it's nothing better than helping someone break the cycle.
Yeah.
That's a rewarding feeling. And we get that this is always a very touchy subject, because talking about personal finances is kind of like, ooh, this is a sensitive subject. Having someone trust you to open up to you and be that vulnerable, telling you about their strengths and their weaknesses as it relates to money, trusting you with that story, that is an empowering. And that's I feel that I've been successful with, because I start off all my speaking presentations when it relates to money by being very personable. I share the hard stories and things that I did and mistakes that I made, as well as talking about my broke ass friends.
What are some of the mistakes that you've made?
Oh my God. One of the biggest one was closing a credit card. When I was in grad school, I had a credit card, I think, for about 10 years. It was a credit card that my parents had given me, I think, when I turned 16. It was in my name. I'm a young adult, and I had it through college and grad school. And I made the decision when I was graduating from grad school to just close the account. Yeah. And closing that account wiped away all of my good history.
Oh,
all of my good history.
So if you close a credit card account, they no longer hold your history.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So what I should have did was, if I didn't want to use the card, I could have cut it up and not used it, continue to pay that annual fee.
Just leave it open.
But just leave it open and maybe just charge $100 a year on it, but not to close it, especially when I had such a good, long, lengthy history. Yeah. Closing that account wiped away all of that. And that was like, no.
I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, another mistake that I made was when I first purchased my home, I went out and I just had to get some furniture, because I'm like, futon, a blow-up mattress. I'm not doing that. No. I'm a homeowner now. Who cares how much I just spent to get the house? And I went out and I got furniture from this furniture store and didn't realize that the interest, I just was amazed by no interest for the first 90 days or 6 months. And I just picked furniture for every room. They delivered it. I was happy. That 90 days came so fast. The interest was like 25% a month.
25% a month?
It was ridiculous. And I realized, what have I gotten into? Yeah. I made a mission to pay them off as soon as possible. So I looked at my budget, and that's when I eliminated all those happy hours. And I took all the extra money that I got every month and used it towards that principal and interest, so I could get rid of those people immediately. Yeah. And paying that off, I felt such a sense of pride, because I was able to save thousands of dollars by paying it off 2 to 3 years early.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, let's talk about saving money. What are some of your best tips to help people save money?
Well, I'm a stickler for first write down a budget. Well, write down all your expenses. I think that you will discover a lot about yourself. And one of the things people don't realize is where you spend your money says a lot about you. So whether it's traveling, food, entertaining, impressing, it says a lot about you. So writing down where you're spending your money is saving those receipts. You're going to do a self-discovery. It's going to be an epiphany. You're going to get a budget and a therapy session all at the same time.
All at the same time.
So, but to write that down, there's so many different apps. One of the things people always say, well, I'm not good at budgeting and keeping track of that. There's so many apps that you can find on the App Store that can really keep track of all your spending. You can actually link it up to your bank account. No one's writing me a check, so I'm not going to recommend any. I'm just going to say, just go out there and just do some searching, because there are a lot of really great apps that are available. Or you could do the old school method of spreadsheets, writing it down. And I love the method of just keeping your receipts in an envelope and then looking at them at the end of the week. There's this Dave Ramsey tip where he recommends, if you're going to have a budget for $150 a month for going out to eat, you need to keep that in an envelope. And every time you go out to eat, you pull that money out.
Cash in the envelope.
Right, for groceries. $200 a month is my budget for groceries. I'm going to put that in an envelope.
Okay, so you must live really different than I live, because groceries are way more expensive than that here. $200 a month.
Well, depending on where you live and what part of the country, some people, and granted, if you might have a family of 4, you're spending more than $200. But let's just say for a single person, you're spending $200 a month on groceries. And every time you go to the grocery store, you're taking that envelope with you, but you're really keeping a budget. And once it's empty.
Yeah, what happens? Once it's empty, what do you do?
You're going to be eating some leftovers, or you're just going to have to make do. Or if you have maybe another envelope that you're using maybe for going out, maybe you'll take some of that going out money and put it over your grocery money. Yeah. So there's just different tips and ways to budget and save money. But taking it back to what I initially said, another really important one is to find that accountability person. Who do you look up to as it relates to money and how they handle money? Have a conversation with them and say, I really need a mentor. I really need an accountability partner. Will you help me? Will you work with me? And I know it's going to be tough, but I need tough love.
Yeah. And as you're talking about this, I'm just realizing how, at least in my life, I don't talk about money very much.
Most people don't.
Right. Most people don't. You know, we don't talk about our financial lives, our sex lives, or whatever. So it's like, actually starting to talk about it and be more honest about it, or be more forthcoming about it with people who are safe. I would imagine gets people more in the habit of being conscious instead of just, you know, turning their head and not looking at it.
Yeah, it's definitely someone that you feel comfortable with and someone you trust, because it will be an uncomfortable conversation. And at times it might be a tough conversation, because they're going to say, no, Shana, you shouldn't be doing that. Because remember, you have a goal to stick to, and you going out and buying the $300 purse because it's on sale, that's not going to help you reach your goal. So absolutely not. And thank you for calling me as you're in the parking lot at the mall.
Yes. Interesting. And what about people who own a home, but there's that saying like being house poor, right? Like, okay, I own a home, all my money's in this house. What do I do now if I need more money for other things?
Yeah, first, maybe you should look at refinancing the house, because interest rates are the lowest that they've ever been. I mean, you can get an interest rate now is like 2%. Let's say maybe your interest rate right now is at a 6 or 7. You refinancing your home, getting that lower interest rate, you might be able to save $200 to $300 a month. Another alternative, you know, we're in a pandemic right now and people are really struggling. Mortgage companies are really working with people. So you might could just suspend your mortgage payment for right now. Now, it doesn't mean that those payments are eliminated forever. They just put it on the back end of the loan. But I have a few friends that their, you know, financial situation has changed so much at work, and they can't afford the $2,000 a month mortgage payment. They need that money for groceries and food and all of that. So that's another alternative. But I run into a lot of people that the AC went out and they don't have the $3,000 to get it replaced, and also their floor is messed up, and it's just deplorable the way that they're living. And they said, what do I do? I said, well, you can you can take out a home equity. Let's say you have $50,000 of equity in your home and you need 10 to get a lot of home repairs. That's okay to do. It's not that you're taking the $10,000 going to the Caribbean for a vacation. You're taking it for your investment. It's okay to borrow against it to get the HVAC system fixed, or to get installation in the home, or to get solar panels, or replace new windows, things that are going to make your utility bills lower. Sometimes people show photos of their home and I'm thinking, oh my God. And they tell me, well, my house is paid for. Well, you're sitting on an asset. Borrow against that and get your house fixed.
Great. I love it. All right. What do you want to leave men with? What feels most important that you think people should know?
I think as it relates to money, what we've been discussing today, usually I always tell people, I sign each book that I give to someone, autograph the book. I say, you know, an investment in knowledge pays the best return.
Ooh,
always
knowledge The best return.
Investment in knowledge pays the best return. So do your research, do your due diligence, whether it's wanting to buy a house or a car or a piece of investment property or stocks or whatever. Do your research, inquire with questions, have that accountability person. It's okay to say, I don't have the answers. I make horrible decisions as it relates to money. I need help. It's okay to be vulnerable because you're hurting no one but yourself in the long run. So that's the important
thing.
thing.
It's really challenging to be vulnerable and admit, hey, I don't have this handled. I don't have this part of my life, really together in this way. But if you don't, then you end up farther and farther in the hole.
And I stress to men all the time, and this is another subject for another day, but vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
Hallelujah.
So by being vulnerable to someone, letting them know I really need help in this area, because I'm clueless and I'm lost and I continue to make the same mistakes, that's a sign of strength. And recognizing you have a problem, that's the first step.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of vulnerability, and it's a lot of what my work is about. And, as you said that, I could also see another way of like, okay, we might not want to admit I'm clueless and I don't know anything about this. That's okay to admit. And it's also okay to say like, hey, I want to learn more. I want to be better at this, right? You don't have to immediately think of yourself as a mess or falling apart or wrong if you want to actually get better at saving money or making money or any of those things.
Yeah, because I have a really good friend that says, no one in my house talked about any of this. And so I got into the real world, got my first paycheck. I made horrible decisions because I wasn't taught anything differently. And that's okay. And I realize that that's a lot of people's stories. So I'm not here to bash anyone or to judge anyone. I'm just here to help people make wise decisions with their money, learning from me and my broke ass friends.
I love it. I love it. And where can people find more of you?
I'm on all social media platforms, William S. Matthews. You can visit my website, williamsmatthews.com. All of my books are available on Amazon. Just type in William S. Matthews and easily to remember everything I need to know about money I learned from my broke ass friends.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.